Hey everybody, thanks for joining today. Welcome to the Conservation Conversation. I'm your host, Eric Crown, and today we're going to talk about, it's going to be a little bit different. Today we're going to talk about what you can do to help, and especially in a time where you feel a little overwhelmed. When you go through your Facebook feed or when you start to look at your Instagram feed, it seems like almost like it feels hopeless in a way. And that's actually intentional. And we're going to talk about the Shock Doctrine today and look into how these companies and how these governments make us feel helpless when in fact we actually hold the power. All right. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining us today. Let's see. Let me just get this going here for myself. Now, hey, Michelle. Good to see you here. Hi, Paula. Nice to see you here. Eric, great name. Digging it. Anyway, it's really good to see. I see a lot of that I know that fight for clean water and fight for the future. Oops. Here we go. One quick second. Let me just... Okay, there we are. So I had to get the new studio in order. So yeah, today what I wanted to talk about is that overwhelming feeling that, you can't really do anything. And in fact, we do have all the power. Humans are the main source of the problem, but we're also the only key and the only solution to solving it. So there's a few different aspects of it, and I'm hoping everyone will join in and also share their ideas. Hey, Colleen, yay! Welcome back to the podcast. Colleen was on last week, and Alicia, hey, Alicia. And what I'd love to do is to, like I said, have everybody also, put up links to ways that you can help, to organizations or places for information that you like to go. So first, though, what I want to talk about a little bit is the Shock Doctrine. So this is, there's a great documentary and a book actually written by Naomi Klein on it, but it's based on previous CIA manuals where the concept is if you overwhelm people, then they will have no way to process it. So what I wanted to show you here is actually read this, and this is the Shock Doctrine. It says, this centers on the exploitation of national crises to push through controversial policies, while citizens are too emotionally and physically distracted by disasters or upheavals to mount an effective resistance. So that actually, there we are, is the Shock Doctrine, and what's happening is we are seeing a place where the Amazon is on fire. People can't process that. We have the oceans warming. We have bleaching. We have basically, the pollution. We have microplastics. I mean, on every level, we are being attacked by various things. And a lot of times what happens is these companies or these corporations decide, or these governments decide, we are going to just push so much stuff through and make so many changes so fast that no one can keep up with it. And, a great example of that is actually in Florida. And there's a lot of people from Florida here. So please, everybody, let's talk about it a little bit. You guys have a situation where you're kind of assaulted from all sides. You have sewage dumping. You have industrial runoff. You have LACO. You have agriculture. And now they have just decided to allow mining inside of the wetlands. And also allowed a huge road to go right through what should be open, conservation. Now, what's great about Florida is that they really fight back and they work together. Environmental fatigue, that's a great term, Colleen. That's exactly what it is. By every angle, and they come at us from every way. So, people do feel overwhelmed, and it's very natural. It's like I said, it's intentional, actually. It's not you, and it's not that you're powerless. That's what they want you to feel. but that's not what it really is. And that's why today we wanted to talk about a couple different aspects of how we can make an impact. Obviously starting with on a personal day-to-day, the choices that we make. There's a lot of choices. People are very conscious of being able to, make sure to not get plastic straws. People are being very conscious now of trying to not use plastic bags. And what I'm curious about is what you guys do on a day-to-day basis, in your efforts on ways that you can share with us to help us, live a more sustainable lifestyle. And that's the other thing today. No guests. I just wanted us to all have a conversation and see what we can do, what kind of ideas we can come up with together. One thing that I love, my friend Amy introduced me to these bags that are paper, and they're sandwich bags, and they're incredible. They work just the same as plastic bags. So they are a wonderful option. So, simple changes like that. Now, there's always a debate between plastic and paper. One thing I will say is that back in the day, the plastics company mounted a very big campaign to tell everybody that we were cutting down the Amazon for simple things like, your Xerox paper or, something like your notebook or whatever. But that's not actually the case. The case is that all of that paper product comes from enclosed farms that rotate and continually grow trees. So they actually are not damaging the environment. It was a push to make us think in plastic instead. And it really did work because everybody wants to do right and save the environment. So we're always looking for ways that we can help with that. So that was one of the big kind of cons of the time. So that got us moved over into using plastic instead of paper. So paper is actually a more sustainable alternative. And what they're clearing forests for in the Amazon is more for expensive furniture and expensive lifestyle, expensive housing, and so that's it. That lumber is a very different case than, say, your pad or paper. Hey Vicky, nice to see you here today. Hi Andrea, good to see you here. And JK, wow, I've known JK for a long time now, so. Yeah, it's nice to see him here too, and Rhonda. So this is a great turnout today. So yeah, like I said, any links you guys have or anything that you'd like to share with the entire group, let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, one thing that is a great resource in being able to fight back is what I've found, at least, is social media. On Facebook, you can find groups that are centered on your interests or centered around topics that are important. And those actually create very good, strong communities. Again, to use an example, in Florida, there is a group called Mosaic, which is against phosphate mining. And that group is a source of information that everybody can go to and everybody can share. And that is what's important because I think, Linda says drinking a lot of bottled water instead of providing us clean water. Very good point. They have pushed us to an unnatural solution that we've all now accepted as a natural solution. And, another aspect of that is that right now we're very divided politically. So we have one side and the other side. And the casualty of that is always going to be the environment because we're losing our conversation. And that's what's great about today's show is that we have a conversation and we have an ability to all share our experiences and our thoughts and ways that we can live a more sustainable future. Because again, they make you feel overwhelmed. They make you feel like it's all falling apart and the world's a big dumpster fire, but it isn't. And we have to remember that we have the control. And it's very important. Thank you. Linda just put a link down to the Mosaic group. And I see Mitch Allen is also here, who is another hardcore activist down in Florida. And he's done a lot to fight for clean water and clean future. And Jason, hey, Jason, I knew Jason up in Seattle when I was working with Earth Race on the MODOK and getting ready to get rid of all the fishing gear up there. And what's amazing about this is that everybody is here because we're all thinking, how do we, what can we do for sustainability purposes? So let's see, bad timing. My son's going to Spain. I can't say, hey, Dirk. Dirk is a really good friend, one of my closest friends, and also amazing amazing songwriter, and he has a song. Sorry, Dirk, I have to talk about it. Called "When Good Men Do Nothing," and it brings up the point, and it's an amazing song. I encourage everybody to check it out, Google it. But he says, "Evil flourishes when good men do nothing." And, you know, we are at a time right now where we're all on the hook. You know, the scientists estimate about 2050, we're going to start losing a lot of important species and a lot of important biodiversity and a lot of our existence and our sustainability. So although it seems a little frightening because, you know, we are looking at a very critical time, we're all very lucky to be here during this time and to have the ability to stand up. And, you know, that's the thing is, you know, when you look at conservation groups around the world, you look at Rick O'Barry doing the dolphin work, you look at, you know, Paul Watson doing Sea Shepherd, you look at Pete doing Earth Race, you know, you look at these variety of groups, and what you find is they're just ordinary citizens that said, we have to do something about this. Same with Mosaic, same with all the activism that I found in Florida. It's very inspiring because, you know, we are our own leaders. We are like a leaderless movement in a lot of ways. You know, we can learn a lot from what's happening in Hong Kong, actually. Pretty amazing over there. And again, it comes down to us knowing that we have a voice and they have to hear it. Now, it's a little different around the world how it works. One thing I wanted to do is actually play for you guys very quickly a quick report that I did. I was in Vietnam, and there were water war protests. Now, the water over there, they have the same fight that we do here in the States, and that fight is that. Okay, so that fight is that they need access to natural resource. So what happened was in Vietnam, they gave a 100-year lease to China and said, you can have our fisheries up and down the coast. And all the fishermen decided against that idea, and the entire nation went into an uprising. And I wanted to show you guys firsthand what some of the battles around the world for clean water look like. People that I do see on the streets are like, what the fuck's this guy doing? Yeah. Anyway, I'm not gonna get too close, but I do want to take a look. We'll take a position here. Here's where they fire the smoke bombs after shooting at us with the actual live rounds, and they fire off a few smoke bombs. Try to push everybody back. Yeah, just fired. And these people were fearless. And again, some kind of smoke bullets. Now it's just smoke after the stuff they shot at us. Okay, so anyway, we're back now, and yeah, that was an example about you know what it's like. So it's an international battle, and you know, fishermen have their hands full, and this is, you know, always going to be the difficulty is the balance of industry without the loss of health, without us sacrificing our future generations' health. We still need to find a way to make industry work. So, and again, everywhere where there's a natural resource, you will find these battles. And Florida is a huge plethora of natural resources. So that's why it's one of the states that's under some of the most siege out of all the places. Let's see, who else is here? Hi, Drusilla. Hey, hello, Colleen. Nice to see you here, Colleen. Thanks for joining us. And Den and Eric, good to see you guys. Yeah, so this again, this is the idea. Now, what happened is in Vietnam, as you saw, these were just protests that kicked off while I was just sitting there. Now, these were nationwide. They happened in Saigon. They happened across the entire country. And what happened was the government actually listened to the people and reversed that 100-year lease and turned it into a 10-year lease with a revision and a review after the 10 years. Now, that was enough for everybody to feel it was okay. And then the protests quieted down. So, they listened, they responded. The people went out en masse and the government had to respond. So, in America, it's a little different because we have more of a capitalism. So our way of doing it, I mean, we do protest, and protesting is critical. It's important to show your numbers and be out there. And I have seen recently, Colleen Marie has been working on protests, and a lot of the youth down there are getting involved in protests, and the youth are important because if, each generation we grow, and each generation we change, and each generation we have a new ability for wider thoughts, longer views. And the more seeds we can plant right now in our culture, the better off we're all going to be, because it's a problem we all share. And this is another reason why I love that everybody is here today, because this is now a conversation as we're all here. Hey, Camilla, it's nice to see you on here. And Barbara. Yeah, that's the thing is we live in this, we do live in an extraordinary time where everybody is bringing us video of these events from around the world. And, again, like I said, we sit on a very critical period of time where it is going to shift. We're losing our natural resources. The polar caps are melting. The Amazon's on fire. The ocean is rising and warming, bleaching all the corals. We all have microplastics in our bodies. We all have, chemicals thanks to DuPont in our bodies, in our bloodstreams. We have accelerated rates of cancer. We have let the government run us into deregulation to the point where we kind of have no help left. And that's another thing I wanted to talk to is we used to have the EPA at least, and they had their faults, but they were still not bad. Now we have Andrew Wheeler in charge of the EPA, and Andrew Wheeler is a former coal lobbyist, right? So I know you really can't make this stuff up. So the former coal lobbyist is now in charge of making sure that your environment is clean. So the first thing that Andrew Wheeler did when he got in, one of the first, I know everybody already knows this, but one of the first things he did was he suspended the clean water rules for 2 years. So from February 2018, supposedly, to February 2020, the clean water rules would be suspended. Now that would allow companies to dump anything and everything. And it would allow them to go back in and review and change the clean water rules, which I think, as many people here know, a lot of activists have been fighting to maintain those, because we have multiple levels. You have your personal life, how you can make your impact on the world around you. You have your legislative aspect, where you have to stay on your legislators and you have to know who they are. One great way to do that is to go to opensecrets.org, and you can find out every donor, every investor, and who basically owns your politicians, because that's another way to change it. And hey, Tamara, thanks for joining us. Mitch, yeah, too many resources, not utilizing others. That's governmental, says Mitch. Yeah, that's a good way to say it, because again, they're supposed to be the line of defense. And when your only line of defense being the EPA, and the EPA, for as much criticism as everybody gives them, they were all we had, because governments is the only sort of filter that we had between a deregulated and unregulated business. And businesses are basically tyrannies. They're not accountable to anybody. So they do what they want, and they have to do what's best for business. It's their job. So we can't, we can't be mad at them, but we have to understand their nature, and we have to keep that in mind as we battle them, because we can't expect them to approach it the same way that we all do, from the heart. They're approaching it from a financial situation and a practical standpoint. They have their own people they need to fight for. They're struggled in their own survival. That it's It's almost like they live in battle for the concrete jungle, and the rest of us live in battle for the earth, the more natural aspect of the jungle. Yeah, opensecrets.org. Yeah, thanks for putting that on there, Linda. It's a great website. I use it all the time. And, now that we have elections coming up, it's very important. Now, it's kind of funny. Before I started the podcast, I was talking to my mom, and she said, it's going to be a train wreck because you're going to talk about politics. So it's okay, guys. I want everybody to have this open conversation, because as these elections get near, regardless of what side you're on, you need to see what the policies are going to be and how they're going to affect your children and how they're going to affect the world around you and how they're going to affect your ability to have clean drinking water. We all need to think about that moving forward, and it needs to become less about the right or the left. And I've said this in previous shows, and I will say it again. It's not a very popular opinion, but I do believe that for as divided as people are right now, it's just things that don't matter, because in the end, everybody wants the same thing. We all want to be healthy. We all want to see our families happy. We all just want peace and tranquility, and to enjoy this amazing world around us. So that's why I feel that people are stronger than politics, and people need to focus on policies, not politics or parties, but policies, because policies will outlast any party. Any policy that's put into place will affect generations and generations. So, if we can shift it a little bit and just think more on policy and less on politic or party, I think that it'll really help us as a whole group moving forward, because, here we are. I mean, I see people from around the world right now on this podcast with us, because everybody has a stake in it. This is, like I always say, it's our world. Let's talk about it. And this is what we're doing today, which is fantastic. Environment first, yes. I agree, Michelle. We need to completely have a change here in the system. There is a lot that the thing is, what can I do? And again, we talked about, you feel a little helpless, what do we do? So one thing, we talked about was going out, doing protests. That's important. The second is making sure to analyze your politicians, see who they're taking money from, because in the end, they have to vote the way of where their money comes in. So if they are owned by Big Ag, you can't be upset with them if they vote for Big Ag. Their speeches and stuff don't mean anything. Just look at how they got there, and that'll tell you where they're going. And I employ everybody to, like I said, put politics aside and just take it from that moment. And yeah, that exactly. Planet first, and that's the whole thing. Capitalism is a difficult road, and I think a lot of times we get confused, at least in our country, because we feel like there's like it's a nice, it's a business thing, and capitalism it's cold, it's its own thing. It's not meant to be a caring industry. It doesn't think that way. It has a whole other set of objectives and perspectives, and I don't want to sit and judge it and say that it's whatever, but in the one sense, it's not designed for sustainability. And that's where we come in, because we have to demand that it changes for sustainability, right? When you go to school, they teach you that it's the market and it's supply and demand. So how can we think, well, we may as well just use plastic because it's all we have? No, that's the reverse of supply and demand. If people say, I want paper, then they're eventually going to have to shift over. And, I talked to Captain Pete Bethune on the first podcast about the single-use plastic ban. And my feeling was that it was not quite enough, because they're still making multi-use plastics, and they give you those instead, and they charge you for them now. But he brought up a good point, that if you can change that one aspect of how they have to do business, they will do business in one county, they do business in thousands of counties. So is it cost effective for them to make a change for just one place where the law is in place? Or does it make more sense that they will have to join to just make the change as a whole company-wide? So the more we demand sustainability, the more we demand that the earth comes first, the more we demand that they listen to us, the more they have to listen to us, because their job is to stay in business. And that's what we do. We keep them in business. So it is a very cyclical thing, but they make us feel like we're not part of the cycle. And so I just wanted to bring that back up, that, you know, your dollar is a vote. They always say boycotts don't work, whatever. They do work. And I have a wonderful app that I've been trying, I wanted to tell you guys about. I'm going to put it in the notes down below when I put this, as soon as I'm done with the podcast. It's called Buycott instead of Boycott, Buycott. It's an app you can download, and it is fantastic. It has a little scanner, and you scan the barcode of any product you want, and it'll tell you the company that owns it, campaigns they're involved in. You can also go through and find campaigns that you're interested in specifically, whether it be, you know, for elephants tusking, or any different thing, you know, shark finning, like I have on my fin-free shirt today. But it can be any topic that's important to you. And this app will tell you if your product that you're buying anywhere down the line is in violation of your own personal ethics. It's great. Buycott. So I highly recommend it. And Michelle says, it's all connected. We solve nothing when we think we have more right to natural resources because we live in a certain... Exactly. I agree. That is fantastic. I absolutely love that. It's so true, you know, and the world is, you know, that's the other aspect, is how interconnected it is. You know, you always hear about, well, the Amazon, and they, you know, cut down trees so you can have a hamburger or something. So this does bring up animal agriculture. So animal agriculture, let's hit all the hot topics today. We talked about politics. Let's talk about veganism or animal agriculture. Now, you know, I've seen a lot of people say, you know, that vegan is the way to stop everything. I believe it's you know, people that choose it, it can be very helpful. I don't know, you know, it's a very touchy topic, but I'd like to stay on the aspect with veganism as just the animal agricultural side of it. Now, you know, amazing documentaries like Dominion will show you what the animal agricultural scene is really like. Now, the biggest problem is these huge industrial farms, and they're using mass amounts of fertilizer and a mass amount of waste. And, you know, even whether you eat meat or not, the way that it's produced is so destructive to the environment that we do need to rethink, I think, a little bit about that. So if anybody has good suggestions or good recommendations on websites where we can learn more about that, I would also really love to hear about that. Because again, what we buy, that affects the materials used. You know, if we buy paper and not plastic, eventually companies will have to go back to giving us actual paper or glass. Glass is fantastic. Glass is so much more reasonable. And I don't know, I bet a lot of you guys remember the 80s commercials with the plastics, and the kid had like the ketchup bottle, and then it fell, and instead of shattering, it just bounced. And that was the big thing. They were like, plastics, you know, you won't hurt yourself anymore. Basically, they tried to turn our food world into a Nerf world. But, you know, I'd rather take the chance. So Colleen Marie brought up a great point, meat-free Mondays. You know, and this is something that is a fantastic halfway point for a lot of people. If you just a week and say, you know what, I'll go meat-free this one day, the amount that it will slow down the animal agriculture will be a huge help. And again, that's only if your body can handle that type of a diet. You know, I don't presume to know. You'd want to just double check with your doctor. But I personally stopped eating meat years and years ago, and I personally would never go back. I feel great. So my body was able to respond well to it. And, you know, it is nice to be out of that cycle of feeding that animal agriculture, which feeds all the fertilizer. And then, as we know, like from Purdue, it all goes down the rivers and ends up in the Gulf, where we now have the world's largest dead zone. So, you know, we are now paying the price for the last 50 years of what we thought was progress. And it came in certain fashions, and there's been certain great advancements for sure. But at the same time, we have to rethink certain aspects of it, because, and I understand. I mean, you do need plastics for a lot of medical things. I mean, there are people whose lives depend on it. So it's not a black and white issue, but it's about, I think, creating more pressure on the manufacturers to hold up a responsibility for manufacturing to the very end, whether that be recycling or redoing it. So and Camilla says Challenge 22 is a good resource to help with a shift to veganism. Thanks, Camilla. That's great, because that is important to have nutrition or health information that you can then do. So Mitch said he can do it. Great. See, that's awesome. And every one person just tries it a little bit, it's fantastic. So I think that would be a great key to start. So again, we have the way that we conduct ourselves on a personal day-to-day level, which is important. And, I think, again, the biggest part of it comes back to demanding that the companies that you buy from use less plastic. And it is consumer demand. That can make a huge impact. Again, Buycott, B-U-Y-C-O-T-T, the app, fantastic, totally personalized, and helps, And I think we're seeing this new shift also where, my parents' generation grew up with the attitude sort of, well, whatever I want to choose is what the world can offer me. And now we've grown, I think, we've expanded our conscience a lot as a culture, because we're all connected through social media and through the internet. So we have a new way of looking at it and seeing, I think, now a lot more perspectives. And I think that people now are wanting to make ethical choices. I mean, if you have an option, why not, right? If the plastic straw is going to make an issue and, a bamboo straw isn't, then use the bamboo straw. I mean, geez, I was going to show you guys. This is my bamboo straw. Excuse me. I take this with me, and this was a gift from a friend in Cambodia, actually. So this is great, and that is another group called Make Art Not Waste. And go on Facebook, go to Make Art Not Waste, and you'll see some fantastic ideas for recycling. One idea that they use, which I really loved, was the idea of an eco brick. I don't know if you guys are familiar with eco bricks. I don't know if anybody's done that. Colleen, thanks for putting up Buycott. Yes. So, okay, eco bricks the idea is what you do is say, like, you have a Gatorade bottle. It doesn't break down. It's not recyclable. What you can do is fill it with more plastic trash. Then you can use it inside of some cement as something that helps solidify. So it becomes the inside of a brick. And it's a wonderful way to bring in something that cannot be removed from the environment and somehow incorporated it into the architecture of the environment. So it's very fascinating. I highly recommend, if you've never heard of an eco brick, check it out, because if you're going to have a project you're working on or something you're doing at home, it could be a fantastic way to get rid of a little bit of this plastic. Now, while we're talking about plastics, one thing we did talk about last time, and I do want to mention it as well, because I've had some interesting conversations since then, is biodegradable. So if you're like me, you thought biodegradable means I'm responsible and this is an ethical choice, we're all good. It's biodegradable, it'll be gone. But biodegradable does not mean that. I'm surprised. I mean, I'm just as shocked. Biodegradable means that under certain circumstances with certain microbial agents, something will dissolve over time. And what that means is, in order to introduce the microbial agents, you also need to have it in like an industrialized, heated area. So unless the plastic is going into an industrialized, extremely hot area with these added microbials, it doesn't mean anything. Now, compostable means it will naturally degrade. So again, if you see biodegradable, don't be fooled. I was fooled, and I just really wanted to share that with you. Just shocking, the amount of time they spend trying to convince us to do things that are against our own good health. Drusilla says, stopping milk and the variety. Oh, and the variety of milk products is a huge step to take. I gave it up a long time ago. Drusilla, that's actually fantastic. It's come out recently that there is a lot of issues with how much pus and things like that they allow in natural milks. So I'm sure there's going to be a little backlash here from people that like dairy or think dairy is good for you. I've also read, and again, if you guys have links, please throw them up. Let's make this a place where everybody can come back and have a resource. I want everybody to have that option now. But as I understand it, a lot of milks actually will leach vitamin D and other calcium for bones. I know a lot of people that have drank milk their whole lives, and they're like, why do I have osteoporosis? And, we don't know, because, again, our science is always changing. And that's what we have to remember, too, is when it comes to health, we can't base our knowledge off what we knew 50 years ago. And I bring this up because, it's important to remember that until 1773, people thought that the liver created blood and it just gushed around us. So that's why we had leeches. You got rid of the bad blood. So, Galen was the author, the scientist that had this idea. So Galen's concept was the liver just use blood and just, that's you. You're a bag of blood. It wasn't until, 1778 when William Harvey discovered that the heart pumps blood. So that changed and revolutionized how we understand how to heal ourselves. So we have to remember that evolving, and it's always changing. And yeah, science isn't always right on, but it always has an open mind. And each building block is undeniably a step towards further understanding. So it's never like we're wasting it, and there's no such thing as bad science. Well, maybe they'll try to convince me the earth is flat, but that's a whole other thing. Hey, Tony, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining. Hello, Margarita. And, Mindy, it's my cousin. Hey, nice. Thank you for joining also. It's nice to have everybody here. No worries, Drusilla. Again, it goes back to this biodegradable thing. I was shocked. So, these are the pitfalls. And we talked about this before on our podcast with Captain Pete, but I do want to bring it up as well one more time, that in we used to have a great system for bottles here. What I want to do is throw out the idea that maybe, we can ban plastic bottles. Maybe that's our middle step that we can take. There used to be a fantastic method back in the 50s where we had glass bottles and people drank them and they brought them back in and got a little refund or whatever and get another soda, and then they recycled them and they came back out, and then then they switched over to plastics so that the companies would save money. And in 1953, Vermont tried to draft legislation to stop plastic from, stop these companies from using plastic. And in return, the companies like Coca-Cola, Dixie, I believe it was Philip Morris or R.J. Reynolds, I can't remember, formed what's called Keep America Beautiful. And they made that famous public service announcement with the American Indian tear as he sees people throwing litter out of their car. And they coined the term litter bug. And the reason they did it, and it's, hey, litter bugs, come on, we can't, that's completely irresponsible. That's on us for sure. But they shifted the entire blame to us. So now it would appear again that the problems of the world, the trash of the world, is because you threw it out of your house. And it's another shift where they're making us feel that we're the ones that are really responsible for it. And that's why you go through your feed and you feel overwhelmed with bad news, because there is a line of thinking from companies and from governments that say, you guys are destroying the world. And we're back here, and I don't know about you guys, but I think I know everyone on this podcast and everybody I know, all my friends, want to save the world. Nobody wants to destroy the world. And we all have there's give and take. You can't live in like a hermetically sealed place. I think hermetically sealed might be plastic anyway. We live in society. So you're going to have a car, you're going to have tires. There's things we all have to find, but how we conduct our personal road sustainably makes a huge impact. And what we demand of our companies makes a huge impact. And I always want to keep reminding everybody, you have a voice. And I mean, if you count the number of elected officials around the world and you count the number of citizens around the world, you'll see that we are 99.99%. And so if we speak up in unison, it matters and it changes things. And it changes things drastically. And hey, Desnell Phillips, Desnell, old friend from back home as well. Hey, Des, thanks for joining. Yeah, 5 cents each. Right, Mitch, and that's the thing is, there is, and I'm going to put a link down here as well, but there is actually now an open source recycling thing. So what we have out here in LA, we have grocery stores that you can take your bottles to and they pay you back that fee that you have to pay, when you buy them. So you can get your recycling in and you can get your money back, which is a nice program. It brings people in. And I am going to put the links down here to an actual open source do-it-yourself recycling center that any community or area can open up. So it's another thing that we can take back from the people that don't seem to make decisions in our best interest and yet are the ones that have to make the decisions that affect our best interests. So, it's another way that we can fight back too. Hey, Karen, another old friend, and it's good to see you on here. Karen has always been very into sustainability. She was one of the first people that taught me about the use of herbs instead of using Western medicine approach, and finding holistic, natural ways to view nature and to understand that everything that we have that's chemical came from something somebody understood in nature. Yeah, I learned that when I was in Peru in the Amazon. We found the mushroom, and the guy said, scrape the mushroom. And you scrape the bottom of this giant oyster mushroom, and it's on a branch, and it's actually paracetamol. So, tribes were using paracetamol for thousands of years before somebody said, take this pill, it'll help your headache. So, it's another way that we can demand more of that. And there's also a rising consciousness and holistic approach. I personally, with my battle with cancer, I've had a mix. I had radiation, I had surgeries, and I also stopped eating meat and dairy. And I also started exercising, and I also tried to remove pesticides. So, there's a lot of ways, and I use natural herbs. Some of them I got from some shamans down in Peru, and some of them you can just order online. There's very common ones. And if anybody is going through that as well and you're interested, let me know, and I can share with you some of the herbs that I've learned about and that I use. And, I can't really say if Western or Eastern is the way to go, but I can say that there's kind of a mix of those two. And that's what it comes back to, is we need a mix of responsibilities. We need to take our own responsibility, but we also need to make sure that the companies take their responsibility. And if they don't want to, we need to demand that they do. And we can do that through buying power and protest power and social media. We actually have the power now, and it's incredible. And we've seen it, social media itself has changed how the world runs. It's a good question, Mitch. Mitch asked, why don't we make tires out of used tires? It's, a very, very good question, why? And we have the resource. Is it because they just need to continue production? I mean, look, they're about to go through the Everglades because they're saying they're running out of cement. I mean, how does, wow, if you think about that from beginning to end, to take the long view on that, they're like, we should destroy one of the last bastions of biodiversity to make sure that we can build over it at some point in cement tomb. Makes no sense. But Florida's not accepting that. Florida is jumping up and fighting back. So I think Florida is a key place to keep our eyes on as activists, because everybody down there is very passionate and they're not afraid to speak up. And they do know that their voice counts. And again, a lot of us forget that because we feel overwhelmed and we feel helpless. And I want to bring it back to the Shock Doctrine. One more time, the Shock Doctrine, amazing documentary. And it's a great book, but it's the political idea that you overwhelm people so much that they tune out, basically, which is what we have right now, right? I mean, if you How do you say this? Regardless of what side you are politically, when you look at politics, you only see one side of the argumentation, right? If you're pro-Trump, then you're talking about snowflakes and guns, and you have certain things you're interested in. If you're on the other side, you're talking about immigration and racism, and so we're picking these different areas. But what we really need to do is bring that focus back together. And the problem is we're so polarized, we're losing our conversation. And I just wanted to sort of throw out the idea that, I always say this: as bad as we are the problem for the world, we are also the solution. And not one of us, and not any of us, and no group of us, and no group, but all of us collectively. Each of us has an understanding to life, knowledge about what's happening, and ways that we can offer to make a change. And by putting all of our heads together, we can figure out how to move forward together, because the world needs that. So I just, that's why, again, I'm very excited about the podcast today, because without guests, everybody on here has been the guest, and everybody here has contributed a lot of great ideas. Earth911.com, many options for recycling. That's fantastic. Naomi Klein, thank you, Linda. Yes, that also is fantastic. And then, and again, if let's say you want to do some eco stuff for your house, right? You can go to, I really like greendreamer.com. And again, I'll put that in. Here's greendreamer.com. They have a great podcast. They have YouTube. They have so many links to so many good things. Now, they're not like, they don't even know that they're on the show right now, and I hope they're not mad at me. But I just wanted to offer another way to go. Now, one thing is sometimes it's expensive. Like, let's face it. Companies have said, people that want to help, we're going to exploit them. We're going to charge more if you're a vegan. We're going to charge more if you want an eco-based thing. But there's other things you can do just as simple, by using what you have instead of buying. Mindy says, yeah, divide and conquer is so present right now. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Bob Marley has a very famous, wonderful quote, and he says, politics is just used to divide the people. And that's why I say we need to look at policies. What policies are our kids going to benefit from? Those are the policies, and those are the people that I think we need to come together. I mean, everybody's been talking about a third party, but the fact is, a third party already mentally exists, and that is the party of, I care about the future. That's the party of, of the parents. That's the party of, I believe, everybody. And it's a party that includes both sides of everything. So, we need to look at each person's perspective, and from there, whittle down a way, because we can't move, like this. We're not, neither side's going anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. And nature is paying the price, and our kids are paying the price. Just on fightforzero.org, FIGHT4ZERO.org. Stella Bailey was on the show before. On there, they went around and tested the children's water fountains, and what they found was horrible. And I highly encourage you to go to their website. They're an amazing source of information. And we saw it in Flint, Michigan. I mean, it's no big surprise. If you go to Aaron Brockovich's website, they have an incredible map of all of the drinking water they tested that was dangerous or that can give cancer. Everyone says, oh, I know somebody with cancer now. And, everybody seems to have cancer these days. Well, yes, more so than the 50s, yes. Because we have allowed companies to use what's called best management practices, and we've allowed them to regulate themselves. And here we are. So, now's our time. Now we can take it back. We do have social media. We can do this. I see there's so many incredible independent voters. Yes, Michelle, I'm registered independent, so they kind of penalize you for it. You're not allowed to vote on certain stuff. It's kind of weird. Thank you, Colleen, for putting up Fight for Zero. And Minnie says, grow your own. Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing that's great is I mean, we have some of the most amazing soil and access to amazing soil, and there's natural ways to grow your own food. And everybody has enough land to do that. Other cultures are now starting to do that. And you'd be amazed if you Google into it, how many places are not allowed to grow their own food. In Los Angeles, they're not allowed to collect their own rainwater. So water itself, as an essence and essentiality of life, is controlled, even down to the minutia. Something to consider. Yeah, reuse, repurpose, recycle. Yes, I agree. So yeah, so like I said, I think everybody on here is really. Now Mitch says BMPs should be required, not just suggestions. Yeah, but I think the issue right now is that best management practices have been written so that they work and live within the loopholes of a law. So a law says, this sounds very responsible, but we're going to let Mosaic drain 900 million gallons and put it back into the aquifer, and they have to test it once a year. And they only have to test it for pH. They can return radon, they can return heavy metals, mercury, polonium. They can return all that to the water. But as long as their pH is good, hey, who's to blame? So best management practices are not a good idea, and again, we have to find a balance. I understand the concept of people not wanting government interference. But at the same time, I posit the question, how many companies, having been allowed to have best management practices, have had a success story where we're all happy? And how many of them have resulted in human health tragedy? And how do we improve that? If we do want deregulation, maybe it's enforcement. Maybe there needs to be more enforcement over best management, and best management needs to have more stringency. So again, it comes back to a very hot button topic of deregulation, which I think we really have to consider now. I mean, Flint, Michigan was deregulated into what happened. I see a lot of that in Florida, and it's tough, Colleen, BMPs don't work. Regulation is needed. Yes. They get to test it. Mitch, they actually get to test it. Yes. Best management practices self-regulation. So Mosaic tests their own water. And if they fail, they retest it. And if they fail, they retest it. And then they submit the test results they like. And they only have to required to send in once a year their test results. And those test results just have to be for pH. So, for example, the water that comes out is, as you know, filled with, phosphate. It's filled with mercury and all this stuff. And after speaking to some people that work in the factories there, what they'll do is just lime the water so the pH is balanced without regard to it. Then when it gets drawn into the municipalities, it is chlorined. And the chlorine levels spike. So it's chlorined to ensure that all the rest of the stuff that they didn't kill is killed, which doesn't always work, and you end up with really high levels of chlorine in your body, which also have health effects. So there's also some issues with how the municipality waters are running. And the other danger is when best management practices are in place, as they are with a good example, again, of going back to Mosaic in Florida, they're dumping into the river waterways and all the waterways. And the people that have well water, I mean, there's a tropical storm coming right now. What if there's a hurricane? The water is not going to stay where it is. It's going to rise and get thrown everywhere. It's going to be in rivers, wetlands, lowlands. It's going to, it's going to travel. It's going to go into the aquifer. It's not going to stay where it's going to go. So it's going to be difficult. Can we trust the MOs of the world? Mitch, I'm not sure. What's MO? Never took a test. I got to grade myself. Carrie, yeah. Yeah, Carrie, exactly. And that's the one thing which is good, because you can look at your water and determine if it's something you're okay drinking, and if not, I know that they can come in and do it. And I think people on well water, my mom's on well water, she does her own testing. They have amazing filters, with like ultraviolet, and there's a lot of ways that you can really clean your own water. I think better than municipalities, quite honestly. But at the same time, now what we see, and we'll go into all this later in another podcast, is what they call environmental racism, where people that need to eat fish out of the river are being poisoned. People that need to drink water from the tap are being poisoned. People that need these resources that we are supposedly have are being poisoned because they're not being regulated. We have to do it on our own. So, but that's going to be another podcast that's coming down the road, but it does touch here on what we're discussing. And, I think it's very, difficult to, hey, Matingus here. Hey, Matt. So anyway, I think, what we're finding is that people that rely on having access to natural resources, those natural resources are not being protected in the way they're supposed to be being protected. And again, I do bring up that the head of the EPA, the only thing that we had, is now a former coal lobbyist. So we know he's got zero interest in protecting our environment. And you know what? All this stuff and all this bad news and feeling overwhelmed, again, we come back to the shock doctrine. The shock doctrine, this is intentional. The idea is that you feel overwhelmed, so you stop paying attention. You don't click on the Amazon's burning story anymore. You don't want to know who just went extinct. You don't want to know how many microplastics there are or that you're eating can kill you or give you cancer. Like, it's a way to shut all that off. It's the shock doctrine in effect, in perfect example, and being used as a way for these companies and governments to continue exploiting resources while we all feel bad about it. Now, the only thing is we have enough groups and we have enough social media and we have enough interconnectedness these days to remember that we are the answer. We can demand change. We are the only answer. And so businesses aren't going to do it on their own, They're already doing what it is up to us. And people are more active than ever. If you go look at a protest now, you will see kids from elementary school. You will see grandmothers. You'll see people with oxygen tanks. You will see, people that, have like big sideburns and hippies and hipsters and, heavy metal guys. You'll see bikers. You'll see everybody in the world coming out to fight for the environment because, again, it's what we all have. It's what we all share. And unfortunately, it's what we've all let go of, and it's all what we need to reclaim together. Mo, Larry, and Curly. I don't know what that was in relationship to, but I like that. So Michelle has a great question. How do you test your own water? So there's a few different ways. You can contact your county, and they may have water testing available through your county Department of Health. If you have questions as to what your county Department of Health is doing, you can actually check other labs. And I will put some links down as soon as the podcast is over to a couple labs that will take water samples from anywhere around the states, and you can have your water tested. They also have officials from the counties that'll come out and test your water, but we don't necessarily recommend that as much as self-testing. Carrie, you have to send it off to a lab. And Carrie, if you have any good links, if you could also drop those in the comments, it'd be fantastic. I personally have used labs out of state to make sure there's no conflict of interest in them. So it's something that's definitely, a possibility. So what we're going to do is, let me just bring this up for you guys here. And UGA. Okay, let me show you one of the labs that I think is a fantastic lab used for water testing. And here we go. Okay, this is the Agriculture and Environmental Services Laboratories, University of Georgia. So this lab is fantastic. You can go to their website, and they will be able to give you all kinds of ideas. They have different kinds of tests you can take. And here we go. I'm back. I'm not back. Back now. Here we go. Yes. So anyway, that is another lab that you can always use to test. Like I said, they have testing. But the other question is, what do they test for? So, for example, if we look at some towns where there is mining, the Department of Health will test for certain things, but they will not test for other things like phosphate or polonium. They'll test for lead. Most departments will only test for lead because that's become a federal mandate. Radon is very complicated. Radon is air, it's water, it's the conversion of those. But radon has a link to cancer, and so it's very critical. And most of the radon tests they'll give you will be air versions of radon tests. So there's something right that as well. Yeah, Colleen Marie says, use an independent lab. Do not trust your county. I agree with what Colleen is saying there. Don't trust them because, you know, very often the counties work with regulating and permitting companies, corporations, exploitations. So in general, you know, you want to approach the county as if they usually work for the company. And you need to see it from their eyes because they do. You know, a lot of these companies bring in work and income. And part of the county's job is to make sure their people are working. It's to make sure that they have tax money. It's to make sure that they can keep their services going. So again, there's a lot of moving parts, you know, and I wish there was an easier answer. But anyway, we are getting now to about an hour in, and we're going to start to kind of wrap it up a little bit. But one thing, again, you know, what can I do? When you look at the news of the day, it's overwhelming by design. You are being turned off intentionally by use of what's called the Shock Doctrine, which is a common and worldwide used CIA manual that comes from both MK Ultra and also the actual using shock therapy. Yeah, fascinating stuff. But you know, they did a lot of study on how the mind works. So again, you are empowered, and there's groups you can find on Facebook. There's groups you can find to start talking to other people and sharing information. Mosaic is a group I bring up all the time that's amazing. You know, there's the South Florida Clean Water Movement group is amazing. People bring up all kinds of incredible topics. Again, if you haven't already on Facebook, follow Colleen Marie. She does a lot of amazing reporting on what's happening out there. And the same with Michelle Bassan. She's in the field and she was on our other podcast as well. So, but you know, what can we do? We can start thinking about politics in terms of policies and not parties. We can start voting for the environment, regardless of who's saying what. We want to vote for the people that hold our perspective on how to preserve and conserve the environment. We can vote with our dollar. What you buy is what they will make. Remember, not what they make is what you buy, which is how people think. We have no choice. That's wrong. What you buy is what they will make. Personal choices. That's how much plastic you use, how often you go into a gas guzzler. You know, do you have like a giant Humvee? You know, you got an electric car. What's going on out there? So we all make choices in every aspect from our clothing onward that affect everything. Clothing-wise, one other little weird thing I wanted to bring up, just to remind everybody, polyester is plastic. Polyester is plastic. And if you buy polyester clothing and you throw it away, it's going to go into a landfill and it's going to end up back in the ocean. It's not going to ever disappear. It is plastic and should be treated like plastic. We take plastic, it gets recycled, it gets pounded out into thin fibers, mostly in China actually, turned into polyester clothing, sent back to America for consumption. So just, you know, something to think about. I know there's all the other issues. People say, well, there's cotton and they use pesticides, and then you also have fair trade. There's a lot of aspects. And again, depending on your ethics, if you go to Boycott, the app, it'll help you source what you're buying with what your ethics are. And again, they're not sponsoring or anything. I just started using it. I wanted to review it, give you guys an honest review of it. But yeah, your choices affect the world. You affect the world. You know, we're all here. We are the entire world. It's our world, and we have to talk about it. So I just wanted to thank everybody to be here today, to join us, to add all these amazing comments, all these amazing links. You know, and join us next week. We are going to be talking about the Amazon. We're going to be talking to some people that are in the Amazon and find out a little bit deeper what's going on over there, and try to bypass the news and bypass the spin and just talk to the people that are there on the ground and seeing what's happening. And oh, before I go, also, I wanted to mention to you guys, if you, I'm very excited to say we do have a sponsor now. Not every state is allowed to have CBD, but I use CBD every day and I love it. I highly recommend it. This is preemptive. If you use my name, Eric15, you can get 15% off of your orders for life. So if you do want to use CBD, I just wanted to show you guys that you have that option there. And yeah, just use my code if you're allowed to. If you don't know if you can have CBD or not, go to the website. It'll show you how to do that. So thank you guys so much for joining in. I love these. I love these shows. I love these conversations. I love hearing what you guys have to say. There is so many amazing new opportunities, new thoughts, and each one of you brings that in. And like I said, remember, we are all part of the solution. We just need to stay thinking together, talking together, being together, and remember that we are together. So thanks again for joining, guys. I can't wait to see you all next week. Remember, we are every Sunday live on Facebook and YouTube, and then every Thursday, a new one on Anchor FM, which I'm happy to also say I now have the conservation conversation online. So you can go to anchor.fm, and we've gone on there as well. So you can also catch up with past episodes if you wanted to check them out. And another thing, guys, in the comments, please let me know what else you want to talk about. I would love to go over every topic and just keep this conversation alive. So let me know what you'd like to talk about in the comments section. Make sure that you've subscribed to me on YouTube, and I'll put that link down there. And make sure to click on the bell so you get notifications every time I go live. We have some new videos to add, and I look forward to talking to you guys more. Thanks for tuning in.